Okay, so here's something to think about. What happens when a government tries to shut down a radio station, not because it's failing, but because it doesn't like what's being said?
That's a big question, and it's exactly what's at the heart of one of today's stories. Let's dive in.
Welcome to DeActa Daily Digest. I'm Joseph.
And I'm Juniper. Here are today's top stories.
First up, Israel's High Court of Justice has annulled the government's decision to shut down Galei Tzahal, or IDF radio. The court ruled unanimously, saying the move was motivated by improper considerations.
That's a strong statement. The justices found that the decision wasn't based on lawful grounds, but rather on dissatisfaction with the station's editorial stance. That's a pretty serious accusation against the government.
It really is. Justice Yechel Kasher, writing for the court, made it clear that using governmental power to silence a broadcaster because of its content is fundamentally incompatible with democratic principles. He didn't mince words.
But what's interesting is that the court didn't say the station couldn't be closed under any circumstances. They acknowledged that the government has the authority to make decisions about state-run institutions like IDF radio, but only if it's done for the right reasons.
Exactly. Justice Alex Stein added another layer to this by pointing out that freedom of expression doesn't necessarily mean the state has to operate a radio station. He even raised concerns about the image of uniformed soldiers conducting political interviews.
That's a fascinating angle. Stein argued that the army, which is supposed to represent everyone, shouldn't be involved in political discourse, even indirectly. It's a nuanced perspective that complicates the debate.
And then there's National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who had a very different take. He called the court's ruling a coup against democracy and accused the judges of overstepping their bounds.
He didn't hold back. Ben-Gvir argued that the court was undermining the elected government and even suggested that judges who want to make political decisions should run for office. That's a pretty bold statement.
It is, and it highlights the ongoing tension between Israel's judiciary and its executive branch. Ben-Gvir also mentioned that his party, Otzma Yehudit, would push for comprehensive judicial reform as a condition for joining a future coalition.
That's a significant political move. It shows how this ruling could have ripple effects beyond just the fate of IDF radio. It's part of a larger debate about the balance of power in Israel's political system.
And it's not just about politics. This case also raises broader questions about the role of state-run media in a democracy. Should the government even be in the business of running radio stations? And if so, how do you ensure they remain impartial?
Those are tough questions, and they don't have easy answers. But let's move on to our next story, which is equally complex and troubling. This one's about reports of Hamas escalating detentions and harsh interrogations in Gaza since the October 2025 ceasefire.
According to the IDF and the Shin Bet, Hamas has been using increasingly coercive measures to consolidate control over Gaza. This includes arbitrary arrests, physical assault, extortion, and even prolonged solitary confinement.
What's particularly disturbing is that these actions aren't limited to political opponents. Minors and women have also been targeted, which paints a very grim picture of the situation on the ground.
And it gets worse. The IDF's Arabic language spokesperson, Lieutenant Colonel Ella Waweya, reported that some of these interrogations are happening in civilian structures like schools, hospitals, and mosques. These are places that should be safe havens, not sites of abuse.
It's a stark reminder of how complex and devastating the situation in Gaza is. Hamas's actions not only harm the individuals directly involved, but also have broader implications for the civilian population and the region's stability.
Lieutenant Colonel Waweya described this as a continuation of the harm and destruction inflicted on Gaza's population. It's a sobering thought, especially when you consider the broader context of the ceasefire and the challenges of rebuilding and reconciliation.
And it raises questions about accountability. Who holds Hamas accountable for these actions? How do you address these abuses in a way that protects civilians and promotes long-term peace?
Those are critical questions, and they don't have easy answers either. But let's shift gears to our third story, which actually ties back to our first one. This is about another court ruling related to Army Radio, a station with a 75-year history.
This case is similar to the Galei Tzahal, ruling in that the court found the government's decision to shut down Army radio was partly motivated by disagreement with its editorial stance. Once again, the judges ruled that such considerations are improper.
It's almost a mirror image of the first case. The government had planned to end Army radio's broadcasts on March 1st, 2026, following a unanimous cabinet vote in December 2025, but the court intervened after petitions were filed against the closure.
Justice Kasher, who also wrote the opinion in this case, reiterated that public authority cannot be used to silence a media outlet simply because its content displeases those in power. It's a consistent message about the importance of democratic principles and freedom of expression.
But as with the Gilad Sahal case, the court didn't rule out the possibility of a legitimate closure. It's all about the process and the motivations behind the decision.
And that's what makes these cases so fascinating. They're not just about the fate of individual radio stations. They're about the broader principles of democracy, freedom of expression, and the rule of law.
Absolutely. These rulings set important precedents, not just for Israel, but for any democracy grappling with the relationship between government and media.
And they remind us that these issues are never simple. They're always intertwined with politics, power dynamics, and the complexities of governing in a democratic society.
So, what's the takeaway here? For me, it's the importance of vigilance, whether it's about protecting free speech, holding governments accountable, or addressing human rights abuses. These stories remind us that democracy and justice require constant attention and effort.
I couldn't agree more. And they also remind us that the work of building a just and equitable society is never done. There's always more to learn, more to question, and more to strive for.
Well said. And on that note, I think we'll wrap it up here. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.